Big banged by a ham on the head. Hi, I'm Mark.
I'm Scott. Oh my God. That's great.
You know, I mean, I'm just like the image in my head of what this should look like and what it
Yeah.
actually does. But whatever. Talk about what are we? What are we doing here?
And this is Church is Lame, the podcast where we try to fix the church by talking about the stupid things churches do that break the entire body. Mark, that is an epic title. What's going on?
All right. So, you know, our favorite scientist,
Quote unquote.
yeah, like hopefully you could hear the air quotes.
Right. Yeah.
My gosh, like, he said it again, and he's kind of right about this, but for the entirely wrong reason. So he's saying like, you know, like the James Webb Space Telescope with all of its pictures aren't proving the Big Bang, and it's like, well, you're kind of right in the fact that we've already proven the Big Bang without it.
Right.
So like, it isn't bringing more credulity to the Big Bang. It's in that way, but like this, it's like the worst kind of like bad. I don't know. I want to call it scholarship because that would imply that people involved were recognized as scholars.
Right. So first of all, we're talking about Ken Ham, Answers in Genesis.
Yes.
They're our favorites. They are our favorite intellectual minds of the modern church. They're our
Yeah.
favorites.
And like it says, like
We love
in
them.
this goofy little article, it says, according to a news report quoting one physicist
Nice.
who does not believe the Big Bang happened, and then it just says a bunch of things that are about as scientific as the instructions for hanging blinds.
Oh my God.
Actually, you know what? Those are more scientific than what this guy said.
Yeah.
Just hands down. And the beautiful part of this. Oh, do you want to guess what it is?
No, I don't even want to guess. Go ahead and tell me.
Okay, so they're quoting this physicist Eric J. Lerner.
Mm-hmm.
If this guy's a physicist, I'm a teapot, is kind of what I'm coming to say. Yeah, I'm not meaning to bring like the extra snark today.
Right.
But it's like, so just to say who this guy is, this guy, he went to school and got his bachelor's degree in physics, and then dropped out of grad school and became a journalist, and then eventually started a company that does like stuff with plasma, which is stuff you can do with a bachelor's degree in physics.
Yeah. So for some context, the arguments against using telescopes to prove the Big Bang aren't brand new.
No.
And Eric's particular arguments are long since have been debunked.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so now Ken Ham, who has a vested interest in proving the Bible as correct and authoritative, leaned on, my understanding is he leaned on Eric's previous work to then kind of reignite this argument that was already settled, if I've got that right.
Yeah, that's more or less what we got going on here.
That's essentially what happened. And this kind of, once again, speaks to the lack of character of Ken Ham.
Right? Like this guy. So I clicked on the link in Answers in Genesis, which took me to another quote unquote article, which then gave me another link to a bio from the IEEE, which is an engineering organization, if you're not familiar with it. And on that page, it described this guy's bona fides in very generic terms, but that still made it clear that no, he never actually got a master's degree or a doctorate in physics. And then it had, weirdly enough, like a little thing that said, okay, well, he's published 9 articles between 1986 and 2020, which, and that's not saying like these were even published in peer-reviewed publications, just 9 articles that are related to his engineering bio here.
Right. Like, and I don't think that's to give flack to anybody who's got a bachelor's degree. That's just to say that the people who are working at the highest levels of physics and of astrophysics and the history of the universe, like these are all cats who are working at the PhD level.
Right.
You
Like
know?
not and the people that are doing the work,
Yeah.
to do this kind of stuff, like they will publish 9 articles sometimes in a year. I mean,
Yeah.
they might not write 9 articles that on their own, but these are all co-written. But it's like that's it, not like 9 articles in 40 years. So that's why I'm
Right.
saying like this guy is not a scholar by any definition of the word. He's not a scientist because he hasn't graduated with a doctorate in physics, which is what you need to be able to even work in these fields. Like most of these fields, like to get into, like as a doctoral student, you can
Right.
start getting into these things. Like they will not let you in as even a master's student. They're like, oh well, you want to write a research paper? Yeah, here's some information, kid. But like you're not going to become part of these, these field changing experiments.
Right. And so that's not to say he doesn't have any expertise. He certainly has more expertise than you and I, but like a lemur has more scientific expertise than you and I, you know?
I'm gonna fight you
So,
on that one.
right, right. And so, like, that's just to say, like, just because you have more expertise than Scott or Mark does not make you an expert, right?
Right.
And if you are not an acknowledged expert, acknowledged by your peers as an expert, you may not want to try to pass yourself off as an expert, because it just kind of makes everybody look bad. Not that Ken Ham needs any help looking bad. And I don't want to like spend too much time on Eric, because this is not really about Eric. This is about Ken Ham and Answers in Genesis, and how just like every other like prosperity gospel wingnut who benefits financially from this kind of crap, he's just another guy who preys on the weak-minded in order to enrich himself.
I think you're being very charitable toward him right now.
Towards him or towards the weak-minded? I don't know.
Towards him.
But yeah. Oh, okay. So how would you say it?
I'd say he's a satanic charlatan who is really trying to lead people astray, fill their minds with nonsense in order to create a weak faith that's going to be able to be destroyed quite easily. Because all of these things that he says, like what he calls science, it's a miracle that he even understands what that word means, but I don't think he does.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, because it's like, to be scientific, you have to be able to make predictions and have repeatability, which his stuff doesn't have. He makes like these claims that, well, the Bible is as it is written, as literally as humanly possible to interpret it. Genesis chapter 1 describes how the universe was made. That's it. Hands down. He has a statement. He says, like, we have an eyewitness account of creation that says God spoke the universe into existence.
Yeah.
God speaking the universe into existence doesn't mean we don't have an expanding universe that began with the so-called Big Bang. Because if you don't know, Big Bang is a phrase that was, oh gosh, was it Hubble? I want to say it was Hubble that actually came up with that phrase as a way of denigrating that cosmology, but it's just like saying we have an eyewitness account. It's like, well, if God spoke the universe into existence, it doesn't mean that what it looked like wasn't what scientists say it looks like.
Right. The thing so the thing that differentiates the version of quote unquote science that Ken Ham does versus the science that real scientists do is that real scientists are actually excited when they get the wrong results.
Right.
When the results of their experiments actually defy their theories and expectations, that's actually a win. That is more data, right?
Mm-hmm.
That actually helps to hone their theories. But Ken Ham doesn't operate that way. He operates with not a theory, but with an agenda, right? And so he's not doing experiments. He's just looking for any nugget of information anywhere that will satisfy his agenda, and then tries to pass it off as inarguable truth. He's a lot like Jordan Peterson that way.
Yeah, and I think the worst part of like what Ken Ham does is like he takes this thing that says, "Oh, well, see, this actually disproves this thing that I wanted to disprove," when the data that comes back from it are what the scientists have predicted that they were going to see.
Yeah,
like it's terrible and it's stupid, and he needs to stop. He needs to go back to making statues of people riding dinosaurs or whatever it is he does in his spare time, and leave science to people who actually understand physics to begin with.
Right. And like that's only half of it, right? The other half of that is that people need to stop making a virtue out of stupidity, out of
Right.
ignorance, right? That is not like being simple is not a virtue. Now, being satisfied in the simple life, that could be a virtue, right? Having joy with what you have can be a virtue, right? But
Hmm.
ignorance in and of itself, stupidity in and of itself is not a virtue,
Well, yeah,
right?
like
Not,
I want to like
yeah,
define our terms better here, because like
yeah,
stupidity, like I guess like the way I would use it, right, is communicating that somebody just lacks the capacity to understand or to think.
mm-hmm,
Whereas ignorance can be accidental or deliberate. And I think that this kind of thing promotes a deliberate ignorance, which then just,
yeah.
and to me, like, that breaks the church like, by producing just this awful witness to the world around us. I don't know if you agree or disagree with that.
Yeah, so I believe that people who are let's put it this way. I believe that people who don't have an academic rigor in things that they don't care about probably don't have an academic rigor in things they do care about,
Mm,
right? So if they don't care about science enough to figure out whether or not science plays into what they believe about God, they probably don't care enough about God and the Bible to figure out what really applies to spiritual living and what doesn't. You know?
I think you're right in that. It's like that kind of old adage: how you do one thing is how you do everything,
Yeah.
sort of a thing.
Right.
So
Yep.
so let's move on, because
Please. Moving on.
I've been able to help initiate some level of rage.
There you
And
go. Yes,
I want
indeed.
to build on that just a little bit. So so Phil Cooke, who
Hmm.
himself is not part of the problem right now, but he wrote this interesting little article called like "The Loyalty Obsession and Why It's Hurting Churches and Ministries."
Okay.
And his basic thesis is there is this really strong emphasis within church organizations to bring in people who demonstrate high levels of loyalty. And that
Okay.
this ends up resulting in people bringing in incompetent people into their
Mm.
ministries. And I think, and where I wish he went with this, because like in light of things like at the Southern Baptist Conference in Hillsong and Dave Ramsey's organization, right? Like
Yeah.
we talk a lot about like how there's just not a lot of accountability, and
Sure.
we see like the structures of just kind of this diehard loyalty and how it contributes to this
Yeah.
culture of narcissism and this culture of abuse. And I think Phil Cooke really just kind of nails it. Like loyalty is the thing that they're going for. They want people to be loyal to them. They don't want people to challenge them.
Right.
And I think where Phil Cooke just stops just short of saying that, look, this can give rise to these abuses that we keep seeing. Because if you have people that are loyal and incompetent, I mean, how can abuses not actually just kind of naturally arise from that situation? Or maybe I'm just being too dark about human nature.
I think Phil Cooke sees himself as an ally to churches.
Hmm.
I mean, he bills himself as a consultant.
Yeah.
And so I think his point of view, unfortunately, is kind of like with this typical white male perspective of seeing employees as markers of productivity, right?
Yeah.
So he's not necessarily looking at things like abuse and those kind of things, because if he talked openly about church abuse and things of that nature, nobody would want him as a consultant, right? Because nobody wants, like,
Hmm.
the only people you want to talk to about abuse is lawyers and how not to have to pay millions of dollars in legal fees, right?
Yeah.
No, like, so he very carefully crafts his message around making sure that it doesn't scare away potential clients, you know?
Yeah. And we shouldn't be running churches thinking of like people as clients, because that's just
Yeah.
gross.
Right. No, but that's the business he's in, is
Yeah.
seeing churches as clients,
But like,
you know?
and the thing is that like he's trying to say, look, like these are things we have to look out for. And I think he
Yeah.
has found something that like definitely that is a problem.
Yeah.
Because like some of the stuff that we've seen, like we've seen a lot of this blowback, like we have a hot take and we harass, Bobby Houston because,
Yeah.
it's Bobby Houston, right? After everything
Right.
that went down there. And then people are like, well, you shouldn't be blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
Whatever negative comment insert here, you're an atheist and you don't believe in God and you're a woman. Like those
Right.
like the top insults apparently that we
Yeah.
keep getting.
Yeah.
But it's this concept that like, hey, we need churches to be better
Yeah.
is good. And
Yeah. Yeah.
and if we take the wrong values and elevate the wrong values, then we get these abuses.
Absolutely. Yeah, like it would be so incredibly nice if people who had the name recognition of Phil Cooke would be more willing to speak truth to power, would be more willing to tell the emperor he has no clothes, right? Because it means very little coming from you and I and our 170 YouTube subscribers and our 20 podcast subscribers. That we can say it all we want, and at the moment, we're tilting at windmills. But that number's changing every day. So, at some point, people will listen to us. But in the meantime, we need people with name recognition to say the things that need to be said and get the church back on track.
Yeah, and even if it's somebody like Phil Cooke here, his article that I think doesn't go that next step, I would like to challenge Phil Cooke, like, you know what? Go that next step, because like some of the stuff that we've been seeing coming out of churches recently, I mean, like an article we talked about in just an episode or two ago, we were talking about that there was a Department of Justice investigation on the Southern Baptist Conference.
Yeah.
And then I guess that got updated. And then they were saying that, yeah, indeed, that investigation is concerning the sexual abuse.
Yeah.
And so it's like, like, Phil, please take that extra step. So hopefully we can like stop this kind of thing from continuing in the future.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, though, I've got some more abuse for you.
Oh, okay. Come with it.
This is a genuinely freaky one. So we get this from the Roy's report, who never reports on anything janky and weird. So if you're new to us, it's like one of our first episodes was coming from the Roy's report, and that was about Dave Ramsey. This though is about so this pastor Chetlow from Cavalry Words is hard from Cavalry Chapel, and running a Christian quote unquote boot camp in Southern California called Patmos Reality Discipleship. And this is not the only one of this thing in the world. Like there are several of these in the United States. So a whole bunch of students came out and said that we'll quote that it pushed them beyond their breaking point. Patmos used firing squads and middle of the night chases by quote unquote Muslims to make them rely on God, they said, leaving some traumatized and some questioning their faith. One said she left the camp in a wheelchair. I'm assuming that she didn't go in the wheelchair. Otherwise, it wouldn't be terribly shocking. Another said he was forced to survive alone outside in the snowy mountains for 4 days with only communion crackers and grape juice. So they have leveled the charge that these people are using quote unquote simulated torture. I'm not even sure to what end.
Well, I mean, yes, you do. So, all you have to do is read the kind of things they're doing, using firing squads, middle of the night chases by fake Muslims. Like they basically think they are the Navy SEALs of the next generation of missionaries, right? That's basically what they think they're doing. Like they've taken this kind of like what's the word? I don't know why I lost the word there. This fundamentalist kind of thinking like that Christian men need to be strong and tough and manly men. And now they've combined it with like the Scared Straight program and then put in big heaps and doses of like, oh, we need to do guerrilla warfare in the mission field. Like, and they've taken like all these different unnecessary stereotypes and mashed it into one big thing for what like, are they sending these kids? Are they sending them into the mission field? And
I don't know
is
what they're trying to do.
is that what's going on here? Because otherwise, what's the point? Like, unless you're going to send them into the Middle East, where or into Nigeria, where we're getting all these stories of actual Christian persecution, like that's the only reason you could justify quote unquote training that's this tough. You know?
And that's the thing, is like this is like simulated torture. Like it's not a boot camp in a military sense, even. It's like a spiritual boot camp. So
Yeah.
it's not even like it would be more helpful for you if you were going to be a missionary going into like Nigeria right now. It'd be more helpful for you to go into the army first.
Oh wait, hold on. Let me interrupt you here.
Okay.
So this is right from their website. They have a program called the Patmos Intensive.
Mhm.
Okay. This discipleship experience is a 24/7, 16-week adventure of faith and tithe of time to the Lord, where students are taught lessons based on the discipleship style of Jesus.
Right. Right.
You will not only study the Word of God, but be given various opportunities to apply it in real life situations as you're challenged for the purpose of change. The Patmos Intensive will stretch you spiritually, mentally, physically, and emotionally to drive you to the feet of Jesus. Our prayer is for students to be transformed into passionate disciples of Jesus Christ who are willing to go anywhere and do anything for the sake of the gospel. And there it is at the very end, right? This is about brainwashing and reprogramming.
Oh, I mean, for sure. Because like the article had this, it said they weren't, so they said they weren't supposed to talk about what happened with others outside of Patmos, either to keep the surprise for future Patmos students, or because Patmos leaders said that those on the outside wouldn't understand.
Which is strikingly similar to what Navy SEALs say about Buds in Hell Week. Like, we don't talk about it because it would be an unfair advantage to the classes that come after them.
It's also the kind of thing that cults tell you.
Exactly.
It's like, don't tell them. They just won't understand because they're not as spiritual as you. Like that. And so it's like, there's something super culty about this to me. I mean, like it's just because that kind of thing, what you can break down a person's will, you can traumatize them, as people described. They were traumatized. And a part of the article mentioned people who had traumas going in there thinking would help them heal their traumas. And a situation like that is going to make those traumas worse. All it's going to do is psychologically break you so that you just begin to just obey people who want to tell you what to do. I mean, it's disgusting to me in every conceivable way.
Yeah, people are strange. Like, I don't know where this mentality came from that you have to like live through unimaginable torture to have your life turned upside down and be a lifelong recipient of PTSD of that gift. You know, like I know soldiers who spent very little time in the combat theater. You know, but the constant sight, just the sight of blood and the sound of gunfire, it's enough to bring you home a changed person, and not changed for the better. You know, so what these people are thinking is just unbelievably evil, in my opinion. Like, if people are searching for evil in like Harry Potter books, you don't need to go to Harry Potter books. All you have to do is look at Patmos, you know?
Right, yeah, like people will burn Harry Potter books because they're evil, but will allow evil like this to exist and to reproduce itself. And of course, you know, to answer the question, like, how does this break the church? I think it's pretty obvious. Like, traumatizing believers is not producing faith or a strong faith. It's producing, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Like Stockholm syndrome, I think. It's like a Stockholm faith. Let's call it that.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Here's the metaphor I would use.
Okay.
Something can be strong, right? And strength is great, but strength without stability is nothing, right? Yes, like we have super carriers that have whole cities and airplanes that float on the water. They're incredible pieces of engineering. They're super strong. All you've got to do is cut a couple of holes the size of a basketball throughout the hull and watch how fast it sinks, you know? So it's not just strength, the strong faith that matters. It's a stable faith. It's an abiding faith. It's a righteous faith. It's a humble faith. It's a compassionate faith. it's not. I don't know where we got this concept that strength is the only thing that matters. You know?
Yeah, and of course, when you define strength as the ability to be destroyed by some, satanic a-hole who is an
Yeah.
antichrist and not a pastor,
Right.
whatever. That it just
Yeah.
it's frustrating, and it makes me angry.
Yeah. Like this story is just beyond blood boiling.
Yeah, it's like, whatever you do to the least of these, you do unto me. That's what Jesus says.
Yeah.
Like, do you really want to like take like Jesus and throw him into a snowy mountain for 4 days without food? It's one thing
Yeah.
if he picks up and goes out there himself. It's another thing to do it to him.
Right. And the thing is, like, being called to someplace like Nigeria is a true calling, right?
Mm-hmm.
And nobody ever doesn't break from torture. That doesn't happen, right? Everybody breaks from torture. Every torture specialist will tell you this. Every CIA operative who has written a book or gets on YouTube will tell you this. Nobody is expected to last forever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so this idea that we're going to train them so that they have the experience is like train them in something useful, right? Like train them on how to be stealthy, train them on how to be a witness without being so obvious that you jeopardize the thing that you're trying to do, right?
Yeah, but again, like, this is not a program that claims to be training you with skills necessary to go into a hostile mission environment.
But that's what I think the intention is. That's what seems to be the intention. What else? What other intention could there be?
I can't read it like that, because what it seems like, because if like, that idea of like, when you go into basic training, there's this kind of like breaking down phase so that they can build you back up. I think that's what they're going for, is they want to try to like physically break you down in order to try to like do this spiritual rebuilding process. But it doesn't, like, they're not trying to actually teach you, like useful, combat skills by breaking you down in like this quote unquote Christian boot camp. It's like they're trying to like make you stronger in your faith so you can rely on God. But there's better ways of making you rely on God than treating you, like, I'm not even sure what to say, like just like an unwanted dog.
Right. Yeah, no, I don't remember any firing squads at my basic training. I'll just say that. I was in the Army. I served, and there were no firing squads involved in my training ever.
Right. So
okay. So
so let's put that down for something that's a little bit lighter.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But just as stupid.
Yeah.
So, according to this article, new Texas state law, because it's always Texas.
Everything's bigger in Texas.
Right. Requires all public elementary and secondary schools, institutions of higher education, my gosh, and institutions of higher education to post in their facilities "In God We Trust" posters if they are donated or purchased by private donations. So there's it requires them to hang them up if somebody buys them for that purpose. But the school district can't buy them. The government can't buy them. It has to be private interests that buy them. And if they buy them and they say, I want you to hang this up, you have to, which is absurd. Because if I told somebody in Texas, well, I bought this poster advertising for a drag show, I want it hung in the school, they would be like, you can go straight to hell.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't pass go or, collect $200, just go straight to hell is what they would tell me. But this is okay. And the thing is, like, you might be thinking, well, "In God We Trust" is the national motto. It's on our currency. A lot of people think that it shouldn't be. But this came on, like, this article even tells you, like, this was originally passed on July 30th, 1956. And it was by a wide measure. Now, at that time, the United States was an overwhelmingly Christian practicing country. It is still a country that's overwhelmingly Christian in identification. And if you go around and you ask people, are you a Christian? A lot of them are going to say yes. Even if they go to church twice a year, on Christmas and Easter, they're still going to identify as Christian. And then this was renewed, I guess, in 2000. Like there was a resolution that kind of renewed this whole process. Of course, that's still 22 years ago, just to point that little fact out.
Yeah.
You know, and the reason that this "In God We Trust" language came into anything, why you know, like one nation under God is in the Pledge of Allegiance, it was specifically anti-communist propaganda
Right.
that was meant to set us aside because, well, you know, those communists, they don't believe in God, but we believe in God and the Christian
Right.
God. So
Yes.
saying that, as they try to claim, that this doesn't in some way endorse a specific religion, I think is being disingenuous to the highest degree.
Yeah.
And Christians are lauding this nonsense.
Yeah. So I'm going to put on my tinfoil hat for a second.
Okay.
And because it's actually much worse than that. It's actually far worse.
How am I not making it seem bad enough?
There is a concerted effort. Once again, like we talked about, kind of like the 15 minutes of fame going on right now in kind of the Christian nationalism.
Yeah.
And this wave to do all sorts of stuff that we haven't done in the last several decades. You know, all because a black president made us so mad that now we have to do these things.
Yeah.
But there is now a concerted effort in this country to blur the lines into how public schools get funded, right? And basically, there's a concerted effort to bring in private money so that you can no longer call a public school, right? So now that then opens the floodgates for more government money to go the other way towards charter schools and private schools, right?
Right. And there's a thing in there that I think is worth adding to what you just said, is that some people, because like a law was recently passed, or not maybe passed, but the Supreme Court recognized. So basically, public dollars can now go to Christian schools,
Right.
and well, religious schools. But we know that people
Sure.
that pass this want that money to go to Christian schools,
Yeah.
and that if nothing blurs the line any more than that, I don't know what it is.
Right. So this is the current wave of Christian nationalism deciding to take aim at those damn liberal public schools and their liberal godless philosophies, and how dare they force us to, you know, think about accurate history and accurate science, and how dare they not let us teach only Christian Bible thoughts, you know? And so now this is the pushback against that. And yeah, it is truly like, just as I still want to use the word stupid, but to make you happy, I will use this is the ignorant of the ignorant, the most ignorant, leading other ignorant people into, you know, leading us into further ignorance.
Right.
You know, it's like we're going back we're willfully taking ourselves back to the Stone Ages.
Yeah, and speaking of the Stone Ages, the article noted that in 1970, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit ruled in Aronow versus United States. It says, it's quite obvious that the national motto and the slogan on coinage and currency, "In God We Trust," has nothing whatsoever to do with the establishment of religion. It is of a patriotic or ceremonial character and bears no true resemblance to a governmental sponsorship of a religious exercise. Now, in its very simplest terms, saying "In God We Trust" is endorsing religious exercise generally, which means you're establishing theistic belief as being inherently better in our country than atheistic belief structures. So they're full of garbage right there. And secondly, when the people that passed this, because there were no Muslims in Congress, there may have been a Jew here or there in Congress at the time. Not that I'm sure about that, but these, you know, this whole thing was decidedly with a, at the very least, quote unquote, Judeo-Christian concept of God. Like they would not have regarded, you know, any other concept of God as legitimate, especially Muslims, right? And so I think that it is like, just from the go, Yeah, it's like people are just they want to justify it, so they're kind of retconning it and saying, well, this is why it's okay, but why do I want to compel somebody who doesn't believe in God to be told, well, in God we trust, and if you don't, you're bad. You can believe a person who doesn't believe in God is unsaved. That's kind of how Christianity goes, but it doesn't make them less than. It
Right.
makes them somebody to be loved and to be cared for.
Yeah, yeah. Like I don't know what else to say about that one.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
so let's dump that out. So, persecution watch.
Yeah, so I've made it my personal mission now that we've kind of seen a hole in our own thinking that we can mistake real persecution and fake persecution. I've made it a point now to never just skip the articles that talk about persecution in other parts of the world and what it really looks like, and reminding our few viewers that we have that we love what real persecution looks like, and maybe we need to change the wording for what our vocabulary for the struggles that we have in American Christianity, right? So we have just two articles real quick. Extremists chop off Christian convert's hand in Uganda, chopped off his hands for converting. And then the other article was police in China raid early rain house church and lock members up, right? So if you're in other parts of the world and you proclaim the name Jesus, you're going to have your hand cut off and you're going to jail.
Yeah, that's pretty terrible stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm, glad beyond glad that is not the situation that we have to deal with here.
Right. So not being able to hang your cross in your public school, maybe not persecution, maybe annoying, right? And it may be a free speech thing, right? Which is all legitimate. Let's talk about it all. Probably not persecution.
Definitely not. But hey,
okay.
You know what? Like, let's move on with a quick update. So it turns out in our continuing disaffiliation watch, the United Methodist Church, 31 churches in North Carolina demand immediate exit from the denomination.
Immediate. Now. Yeah. I want it now.
Yeah, and it's
unbelievable.
Immediate exit. I mean, it's just what exactly is immediate exit? They won't let you walk outside.
Yeah. Yeah, like we're gonna have a sit-in, and like we will not let the denomination back in ever. Yeah. So this is North Carolina. So the pattern is now pretty clear, right? The churches that are done having this conversation about the role of
LGBT people,
of the LGBTQ people in leadership in the church, they are done with this conversation and they are leaving. And they no longer care what the PR blowback is for suing your own denomination. They're going to do it because they just want out.
Yeah, and in the line of just more updates, we have a couple of updates about Hillsong here.
Yeah, so we've reported all sorts of things about the fallout from all of the financial and sexual abuse allegations. So Hillsong's, in a totally unsurprising move, says that they are going to have a meeting soon to talk about changes that they will be making in the leadership and accountability structure amid all these lawsuits. And then, unsurprisingly, Hillsong Australia in particular reports drops in attendance and giving as a result of scandals and COVID, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
That's shocking. And there's another Australian mega church that is now under investigation in Australia. So we've got no shortage of mega church problems here, and it's nice to see that Hillsong is trying to make positive changes.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm not holding my breath, but we'll see what happens.
I'm not going to hold my breath either, because I'm out of shape and that wouldn't last very long.
Especially since one of the pastors affiliated with Hillsong keeps harassing us, but we'll see.
Hey, what can you do?
What can you do except say thank you to our new subscriber?
Oh, yeah.
Right? New subscriber Chris Leverett has recently subscribed. Chris, thank you so much for joining the crap show that never ends.
Do you mean us or the stories we talk about?
No, the stories we tell, okay. Right? There's got to be a better way to phrase that, right? Like,
like, welcome to the monkey farm.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, either way, we appreciate you subscribing and are glad to have you along for the ride.
Yeah. And, and your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to go stand out in front of Rob Bell's house, holding
Ooh,
a boombox above your head, hopefully playing some like 80s love song, and then just like beg him to come onto our podcast.
nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Actually, that's very appropriate because when you talk about like, oh, wasn't that like Simple Minds? That was the band?
I think it was "Don't You Forget About Me" was the
Yeah,
song. Yeah,
Simple Minds, which would be another set of words that would describe us very well. Simple Minds. Yeah.
definitely. Yeah. See,
Like it.
it's all thematic. It all works.
It all works. And speaking of working, we need you to do some work. You need to hit the like button, the thumbs up, the subscribe, the notification bell, like click, 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 all those things that help us get the word out about this show. It helps a lot, and we really appreciate it. And if you want to get a hold of us really fast, and you need to speak to us, you can always email us at churcheslambpodcast@gmail.com. Find us anywhere that you can put Church's Lame into a search box. Reddit is our newest one. Reddit and Instagram and TikTok and YouTube and Facebook and all the socials. Find us and do all the clicking.
Yes, and when you type things at us, we just ask that you make the length of what you type appropriate for the venue you're typing it in.
Right.
So if you
There
want to
you
say
go.
something that's long, email it, please.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, and with that, I just want to say thank you again from both of us. And it's great that you're here, that you're spending your time with us or wasting your time with us, however you want to think about it. We love it, and it'd be really a big blessing to us if you just join us every time we put an episode and harass each other, and just enjoy this process and really put in the work to think about how we can all bless the church to make it a better place. And with that, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen.